The vast emptiness of space stretched out before the horizon, a human exploration vessel that had been mapping this remote sector for the past 3 months. Captain Robert James stood on the bridge, his weathered face illuminated by the soft blue glow of the control panels. His eyes were fixed on the strange object that had appeared on their scanners just hours ago. "What do you make of it, Lisa?" he asked, turning to his science officer. Lisa Miller adjusted her glasses and studied the readouts carefully. She was the youngest member of the crew, but her sharp mind had earned her the respect of everyone aboard the Horizon. "It's definitely a ship, Captain, but I've never seen anything like it in our databases. It's not human, that's for sure." Security Officer Tom Baker moved closer to the view screen, his broad shoulders tense. "Could be a trap. There are at least 3 spacefaring species that wouldn't mind getting their hands on human technology. Or it could be the find of the century," Engineer Mike Wilson countered, his eyes gleaming with excitement. Mike had always been fascinated by alien tech, and the prospect of examining an unknown vessel was too tempting to ignore. Captain James stroked his short beard thoughtfully. After 20 years in deep space, he had learned to balance caution with curiosity. "Take us closer, but maintain alert status. Lisa, keep scanning for any signs of life or active weapon systems." The Horizon glided forward, its engines humming quietly in the background. As they approached, the mysterious ship grew larger on their view screen. It was massive, at least 3 times the size of their own vessel, with an unusual design that seemed to flow like liquid metal frozen in time. "No life signs detected, Captain," Lisa reported, "but there's a minimal power signature. Something inside is still working." Tom frowned. "Look at those protrusions along the hull. Those are weapon mounts if I've ever seen them. This thing was built for war." "A warship," James muttered, studying the vessel's imposing silhouette. "But whose?" Mike pointed to a particularly large section of the ship. "That looks like a docking bay, Captain. We could take the shuttle in for a closer look." James considered the suggestion. Protocol dictated caution when dealing with unknown alien artifacts, but the ship appeared to be derelict, and the potential knowledge they could gain was immense. "All right," he decided. "We'll send a team. Mike, you'll handle technical assessment. Lisa, you're on scientific analysis. Tom, you'll provide security. I'll lead the expedition myself." His second-in-command, Officer Rachel Green, looked concerned. "Captain, regulations state that you should remain aboard while—" "I know the regulations, Rachel," James interrupted with a small smile. "But I've been exploring space since before you were born. Some opportunities are worth bending the rules for. You have command of the Horizon until we return." 30 minutes later, the team was suited up and aboard the shuttle. They each wore standard EVA suits equipped with 6 hours of oxygen and basic defense shields. Tom carried the only weapon, a standard pulse rifle, while Mike and Lisa had their specialized equipment for analysis and data collection. "Stay close and maintain constant communication," James instructed as their shuttle approached the massive entry bay of the alien vessel. "We don't split up under any circumstances." The shuttle's lights illuminated the cavernous docking area as they entered. Smaller craft, alien in design, lay abandoned in their berths. Everything was coated in a fine layer of dust. "This place has been empty for a long time," Lisa whispered, though there was no need to lower her voice. Her scanner swept the area. "Air composition is actually compatible with our biology, but it's stale. I'd keep helmets on." They secured the shuttle and stepped onto the deck of the alien ship. Their footsteps echoed through the empty hangar, creating an eerie soundtrack to their exploration. "Mike, what's your assessment of the technology level?" James asked as they moved toward what appeared to be an internal doorway. The engineer ran his scanner over the nearest wall panel. "It's incredible, Captain. The materials alone are unlike anything I've ever seen. Based on the minimal power readings, I'd say their energy technology is at least a century ahead of ours." Tom kept his weapon ready as they approached the doorway. "If they're so advanced, where are they now?" No one had an answer for that question. The door had no visible handle or control panel, but as they approached, it slid open silently, revealing a long corridor beyond. Soft emergency lighting activated as they entered, casting strange shadows on the curved walls. "The ship recognizes our presence," Lisa noted with excitement. "Some automated systems must still be functioning." They followed the corridor, passing several junctions and closed doors. The architecture was fluid, with no sharp angles anywhere. Everything curved and flowed in an almost organic fashion. After about 20 minutes of careful progress, they reached what appeared to be a central command center. "This must be their bridge," James said, taking in the panoramic viewports and the ring of control stations. Mike approached one of the stations cautiously. "These interfaces, they're designed for beings with appendages similar to human hands. Convergent evolution, maybe." Lisa was scanning everything in sight, her eyes wide with wonder. "Captain, the ship's database might still be accessible, if I can find an access point." As if responding to her words, the console nearest to Lisa suddenly illuminated. Strange symbols flowed across its surface, pulsing with soft blue light. "Nobody touch anything," James ordered, but it was too late. The lights throughout the command center brightened. More systems began activating, displays flickering to life around them. A deep thrumming vibration passed through the deck beneath their feet. "What's happening?" Tom demanded, raising his weapon instinctively. "The ship is powering up," Mike replied, checking his scanner. "Power levels are increasing across all systems." A holographic display materialized in the center of the bridge, showing what appeared to be a star map. A soft chime sounded, followed by a series of melodic tones that seemed almost like speech. James stepped forward cautiously. "Lisa, are you recording this? It might be some kind of language." "Already on it, Captain. The patterns are definitely structured. I think the ship is trying to communicate with us." The star map zoomed in on a particular location, highlighting a path from their current position. "It's plotting a course," Mike said, watching the display with fascination. Suddenly, a harsh alarm blared through the command center. The friendly blue lights shifted to an urgent red, and the ship's vibration intensified. "What did you do?" James shouted over the noise. "Nothing," Mike protested, frantically examining his scanner. "The ship is initiating some kind of lockdown procedure. All exit points are being sealed." Tom ran to the doorway they had entered through, only to find it had sealed shut. "We're trapped in here." The holographic display flickered and changed, now showing an external view. To their horror, they saw their own shuttle detach from the docking bay and drift away. "The ship just ejected our shuttle," Lisa reported, her voice tight with alarm. Before anyone could respond, the giant vessel shuddered around them. Distant mechanisms engaged with a sound like thunder. "Captain," Mike called out, his face pale as he read the energy signatures on his scanner. "The main engines are activating. We're moving." James stared at the holographic display, watching as the stars began to shift position. The ancient warship, dormant for who knew how long, had awakened, and it was taking them with it. Back aboard the Horizon, Officer Rachel Green watched in stunned silence as the enormous alien vessel's engines flared to life with blinding intensity. Before she could even attempt to contact the away team, the massive ship vanished into the darkness of space, accelerating faster than any human vessel could follow. The Horizon floated alone, its small shuttle drifting back toward it like a discarded toy. The ghost ship was gone, along with her captain and crew. And somewhere in the void, ancient eyes turned their attention to the long-dormant signal that had just awakened. 12 light-years away, on the bridge of the massive battle cruiser Dominance, Fleet Commander Kren stood motionless as the alert signal flashed across the main screen. His scaled skin tightened around his eyes, the only visible sign of his surprise. After 3 generations of waiting, the ancient enemy had returned. "Verify," he ordered, his deep voice echoing in the silent command center. The sensor officer worked quickly, her six-fingered hands moving over the control panel. "Confirmed, Commander. The signal matches the historical records perfectly. The Nightfall has reactivated." Kren turned to face the assembled officers of his command staff. Each of them wore the same expression, a mixture of fear and determination that had been ingrained in their species since their earliest education. Every Vex child was taught about the terrible war vessel that had once devastated their forces and then vanished into the depths of space, promising to return when least expected. "Send word to the High Command," Kren ordered. "All combat-ready vessels are to converge on these coordinates. The ghost ship has awakened." Within hours, alarm signals propagated throughout Vex-controlled space. Ships changed course, defense stations went on high alert, and reserve troops were activated. The news spread quickly. The legendary destroyer, the ship their ancestors had barely survived facing, had returned. On the observation deck of the Dominance, Kren studied the historical records once more. The ship had appeared without warning 200 years ago, engaged their defense fleet, and then vanished when damaged. Only 4 Vex ships had survived that encounter. The entire military structure of their civilization had been rebuilt afterward, focused on one goal: to be ready when the warrior ship returned. Lieutenant Dex approached cautiously. "Commander, the first battle group will rendezvous with us in 6 hours. The others will arrive within 20 hours. "Not fast enough," Kren replied. "Plot an intercept course. We move immediately." "Sir." Dex's inner eyelids flickered with concern. "Protocol dictates we wait for reinforcements before." "I know the protocol, Lieutenant," Kren interrupted. "But the Nightfall is moving toward populated sectors. We cannot allow it to reach any of our worlds. We pursue now." As the Dominance changed course, Kren stood alone, watching the stars streak by. His ancestor had been one of the few survivors of the original encounter. The family histories described the terrible weapons of the ghost ship and how it had seemed to predict their every move. This time, they would be ready. Meanwhile, aboard the ancient vessel now known to them as the Nightfall, Captain James and his crew were trying to make sense of their situation. "The ship's AA seems to be partially active," Lisa explained, pointing to the glowing console she had managed to interface with. "It's executing some kind of pre-programmed mission, but much of its memory core is damaged." Mike nodded, checking his own readings. "The power systems are remarkable. They're drawing energy from quantum fluctuations in space itself. That's technology we've only theorized about." Tom paced around the command center, checking each sealed exit. "That's all very interesting, but how do we get control of this thing and get back to the horizon?" Captain James studied the holographic display, which now showed their course through space. The ship was moving at incredible speed, far faster than any human vessel could travel. "Lisa, can you communicate with the AI at all?" he asked. "I'm trying," she replied, her fingers moving quickly over her portable translator. "It seems to respond to certain input patterns, but I can't establish a dialogue yet." A soft chime sounded from the console, and a new hologram appeared in the center of the room. It showed what appeared to be a star system with several planets. "Our destination," James wondered aloud. "Possibly," Lisa said. "Based on our speed, we'll reach it in about 14 hours. Tom frowned. "And what happens when we get there?" "For all we know, this thing could be a weapon on autopilot, heading for its next target." "I don't think so," Mike called from across the room. He had been examining what appeared to be an auxiliary control station. "Come look at this." The others joined him, and he pointed to a series of images that were cycling on the display. They showed beings, not human, but humanoid, going about daily activities. Some were working at control stations, others were in what looked like living quarters or recreation areas. "This wasn't just a warship," Mike said quietly. "People lived here. Families." Lisa adjusted her glasses. "A generation ship maybe, or a colony vessel. With all these weapons?" Tom asked skeptically. "Dangerous universe," James replied. If you're carrying your species' future, you'd want protection. Before they could discuss further, a new alarm sounded, different from the earlier ones. A section of the wall slid open, revealing a hidden chamber that hummed with energy. More systems coming online, Mike reported, checking his scanner. Whatever this ship was designed to do, it's preparing for the next phase. The holographic display changed again, now showing another vessel approaching from behind them. It was massive and clearly built for combat, with weapon systems prominently displayed along its hull. "We're being pursued," James stated grimly. Lisa worked frantically at her console. "Captain, I'm picking up communications from that ship. The translator can only make out fragments, but they're broadcasting some kind of warning or threat. They're charging weapons," Mike confirmed, his face pale as he read the energy signatures. Tom's hand went to his pulse rifle, though the small weapon seemed laughably inadequate against the threat they now faced. "They think we're controlling this ship. They think we're the enemy." Captain James stared at the approaching vessel, mind racing. "Lisa, keep working on that communication system. We need to tell them we're not in control here. Mike, see if you can find anything in the ship's database about peaceful contact protocols. Tom, help me look for any kind of escape pods or shuttles. There has to be a way off this thing." As they scrambled to their tasks, the pursuing ship launched what appeared to be a warning shot, a blast of energy that passed close to the Nightfall's hull. The response was immediate and unexpected. The ancient ship's defenses activated automatically. Sections of the smooth hull reconfigured, revealing weapon systems that had lain dormant for centuries. Energy built up around the vessel, forming a shield of shimmering light. "Oh no," Mike whispered, watching the readings spike on his scanner. "The ship's defense systems are fully automated. It's interpreting that shot as an attack." A deep vibration ran through the deck beneath their feet as the Nightfall prepared to return fire. "We have to stop it," James shouted. "Lisa, Mike, find a way to override the weapons." But before they could act, the pursuing ship fired again, this time a direct hit against the Nightfall's shields. The ancient vessel shuddered under the impact. And then, to the horror of the human crew, the Nightfall responded in kind. Brilliant beams of energy lanced out from its weapon systems, striking the pursuing ship with precision. On the holographic display, they watched as the attacker's shields flared and partially collapsed under the assault. "We just fired on them," Tom said in disbelief. "No," James corrected grimly. "It fired on them. And now we're in the middle of a war we didn't start." In the distance, more ships were appearing on the sensors, converging on their position. An entire fleet was coming for the ghost ship and its unwilling human crew. The bridge of the Dominants erupted in cheers as their weapons found their mark on the ancient enemy vessel. Commander Kren remained silent, watching the battle displays with narrowed eyes. Something was wrong. "Sir, the Nightfall's shields absorbed most of our attack," Lieutenant Dex reported. "Damage appears minimal." "And its return fire?" Kren asked quietly. "Precise, but restrained," Dex admitted with confusion. "Our forward shields are at 60%, but the shot could have been much more devastating. Historical records indicate the Nightfall should have cut us in half with that blast." Kren's second-in-command, Officer Trell, approached with a data tablet. "Sir, we're receiving signals from the Nightfall. They appear to be attempting communication." "A trick," Kren replied dismissively. "The enemy tries to distract us while the rest of our fleet arrives." Trell hesitated. "The signal pattern is unusual, Commander. It doesn't match any known Nightfall protocols from our historical records." Before Kren could respond, the communications officer called out, "Sir, I'm receiving a visual transmission from the enemy vessel." "Put it on screen," Kren ordered, his hand instinctively moving to the ceremonial blade at his belt, the one his ancestor had carried during the original battle with the ghost ship. The main view screen flickered, and to everyone's shock, the image of a being none of them had ever seen before appeared. It stood on two legs, had two arms, and wore some kind of protective suit. Its skin was pale and hairless except for the top of its head. "This is Captain Robert James of the human exploration vessel Horizon," the strange creature said. "We are not your enemies. We boarded this ship as explorers and are not in control of its systems. Please cease fire so we can find a peaceful resolution." Silence fell over the bridge of the Dominance. The Vex officers stared at the screen in confusion. "What trickery is this?" Kren demanded. "What creature are you? And how did you take control of the Nightfall?" Aboard the Nightfall, Captain James stood before the communications array that Lisa had managed to activate. He could see the alien commander on the screen, a tall reptilian being with scaled skin and vertical pupils in its amber eyes. "We are humans," James explained carefully. "We come from a planet called Earth, many light years from here. We discovered this vessel abandoned and were trapped aboard when its automated systems activated. We do not control its weapons or course." Lisa whispered from behind the camera, "Captain, I'm not sure how much of our language they understand." The translator is still calibrating. The alien commander spoke again, its words now being roughly translated by Lisa's device. "Humans, unknown species, not in records. Claim no control of Nightfall. Not believable. Prepare to be boarded or destroyed." "Well, that's direct," Tom muttered, checking his pulse rifle's charge. "What now, Captain?" James thought quickly. "Lisa, keep working on improving the translation. Mike, what's the status of the ship's defensive systems?" Mike was hunched over a console he had partially disassembled. "The automated defense protocols are incredibly sophisticated. I can't shut them down, but I think I might be able to." He paused as his fingers brushed against a new interface that had appeared. "Captain, I think I found something." A holographic display materialized in front of Mike, showing what appeared to be a weapons control system. Unlike the other systems they'd encountered, this one seemed designed for manual operation. "It's a targeting override," Mike explained with excitement. "The ship's AI still controls the weapon power and timing, but this interface allows manual target selection." "Can you use it to prevent the ship from firing on them?" James asked. Mike's fingers moved across the holographic controls. "I think so, if I designate empty space as the target instead of their ships." On the communications screen, the alien commander was giving orders to his crew. More ships were appearing on their sensors, surrounding the Nightfall in a loose formation. "We're running out of time," James said grimly. "Lisa, get back on the communication channel. Tell them we're going to demonstrate our lack of hostile intent." As Lisa worked the communication array, the Nightfall shuddered again as it took another hit from the alien vessels. "They're testing our shields," Tom reported. The ship's automated defenses began charging for another counterattack. Mike frantically adjusted the targeting controls, redirecting the aim toward empty space. "Captain," Lisa called out, "I found something in the ship's database, a recognition signal. It might help them identify this vessel's origins." "Send it," James ordered. Lisa activated the sequence just as the Nightfall's weapons fired, harmlessly into the void thanks to Mike's intervention. A pulse of data streamed toward the alien fleet along with a complex pattern of lights that rippled across the ancient ship's hull. On the Dominance, Kren watched in astonishment as the dreaded enemy vessel fired its main weapon into empty space, deliberately missing all of his ships. At the same time, his communications officer reported receiving a massive data transmission. "Sir, this signal," the officer said with wonder in his voice. "It contains identification codes and historical markers. According to our oldest records, this is an authentic verification sequence from before the Great Battle." "What does it tell us?" Kren demanded. The officer looked up, confusion evident on his face. "It identifies the vessel as the Nightfall, but not as a warship. According to this data, it was a rescue vessel, a ship designed to save refugees during the collapse of the Third Dynasty." Murmurs spread across the bridge. This contradicted everything they had been taught about the fearsome ghost ship. "Lies," Kren declared, but with less certainty than before. "The Nightfall devastated our defense fleet 2 centuries ago." "Sir," Trell said quietly, Our historical records from that time were fragmented after the great data corruption. What if? What if our understanding of those events is incomplete? On the screen, the human captain spoke again, the translation now clearer. "We found information in this ship's database that suggests it was not built as a weapon of war, but as a vessel of mercy. Its defensive capabilities were designed to protect the innocent, not to conquer. Please, let us share what we've discovered." Kren stared at the strange alien being. 2 centuries of military doctrine and cultural belief were being challenged. His entire species had built their defense systems around defeating this one vessel when it returned. "Sir," his tactical officer called out, "the rest of the fleet has arrived. 37 vessels now surround the Nightfall, awaiting your command to commence full attack." Kren looked at the worried faces of his bridge crew, then back at the human captain on the screen. Something in the human's expression gave him pause. There was no fear there, only concern and hope. "Hold attack positions," Kren finally ordered, "but do not power down weapons." He turned back to the screen. "You have 1 orbital cycle to prove your claims, human. After that, we destroy the Nightfall and everyone aboard it." The human captain nodded solemnly. "Thank you, Commander. 1 cycle will be enough." As the communication ended, Kren turned to his second-in-command. "Prepare a boarding team. I want to see this vessel and these humans with my own eyes." Trell nodded, but hesitated. "Sir, if they're telling the truth, and we've been wrong all this time, then everything we believe about our history may need to be reconsidered," Kren finished, his voice heavy with the weight of responsibility. "But first, we need to be certain." The clock was ticking. 1 orbital cycle to uncover the truth about the ghost ship, a truth that might change everything both species believed about their place in the universe. The boarding shuttle from the Dominance docked with the Nightfall 6 hours after the ceasefire began. Captain James and his crew waited nervously in the massive hangar bay as the airlock cycled open. Commander Kren emerged first, flanked by 4 armed guards. The Vex were taller than humans by at least a foot, their scaled skin shimmering with hints of blue and green under the ship's lights. Each wore what appeared to be a ceremonial armor over their military uniforms. "Captain James," Kren said, his translator now better calibrated to human speech. "I am Commander Kren of the Vex Defense Fleet." James stepped forward, keeping his hands visible. "Welcome aboard the Nightfall, Commander. Though I should say, we're as much guests here as you are." Kren's vertical pupils narrowed as he surveyed the vast hangar bay. "This vessel has haunted our cultural memory for 2 centuries. Our historical records show it destroyed half our defense fleet in the Battle of Zaren's Gap." "That's why we need to find the truth," James replied. "Lisa has discovered what we believe to be the ship's main archives. We were about to investigate when you arrived." Kren gave a curt nod. "Lead the way, human. But know that my fleet remains in attack position. Any sign of treachery will be your last." As they walked through the corridors of the ancient vessel, Mike explained what they had learned so far. The ship's systems are mostly automated, but designed to respond to organic control when needed. We've managed to access some basic functions, but much of the database is locked behind security protocols. Trell, Kren's second-in-command, studied the walls with fascination. "The construction methods match our oldest architectural records. This ship is indeed from the time of the Third Dynasty, before the collapse." "The what?" Tom asked. "A period in our history," Kren explained reluctantly, "when much of our civilization was destroyed in a series of natural disasters. Many records were lost. What remained told of a great battle with the Nightfall, which became the foundation of our modern military doctrine." They reached a large circular chamber that Lisa had identified as the ship's information center. Holographic displays activated as they entered, responding to their presence. "This is it," Lisa said excitedly. "The main archive room. I've been trying to bypass the security protocols, but it requires some kind of authentication I haven't figured out yet." Kren stepped forward, examining the control panels. His eyes widened with recognition. These symbols, they are similar to our ancient script, from before our writing was standardized. Can you read them? James asked. Some, Kren admitted. This section refers to heritage and legacy. He pointed to another symbol. And this one means blood of the creators. Mike snapped his fingers. It's asking for genetic authentication. It needs DNA from the species that built it. All eyes turned to Kren and his officers. You think my people built this ship? Kren asked, his voice uncharacteristically uncertain. It would explain why the systems seem familiar to you, James pointed out. Why the ship is in your historical records. After a moment of hesitation, Kren placed his scaled hand on what appeared to be a scanner. The panel hummed, and a soft chime sounded. Partial match detected. A melodic voice announced in a language that the Vex officers instantly recognized. Genetic drift of 0.03% from baseline. Authentication accepted with limited access. The room transformed around them. Holographic displays burst to life on all sides, showing images of a civilization at its height. The beings in the images were clearly Vex, though their appearance was slightly different from the modern version. My people, Kren whispered, his usual military bearing momentarily forgotten as he stared at the images of his ancestors. A central hologram formed, showing an older Vex wearing elaborate robes. When it spoke, the words were automatically translated for both species. This is the final record of Admiral Zarin, commander of the refugee vessel Nightfall. If you are viewing this message, then our mission to preserve our people has at least partially succeeded. Zarin? Kren exclaimed. Zarin's Gap was named after him. He was a war hero who fought against the Nightfall, not its commander. The hologram continued. The collapse has devastated our homeworld and colonies. The atmospheric changes happened too quickly for full evacuation. The Nightfall carries the last 10,000 survivors, along with our genetic heritage bank containing DNA samples from 1 million citizens and 5 million species from our worlds. The images shifted to show the Nightfall under construction, its weapon systems being installed alongside living quarters, science labs, and massive cryogenic chambers. This vessel was designed as our last hope, a self-sufficient ark that could sustain our people until a suitable world could be colonized. Its defensive capabilities are unprecedented because we cannot afford to lose what remains of our civilization to raiders or hostile species. Lissa looked at Kren, whose face had gone pale. Not a warship, she said quietly. A lifeboat. The hologram of Admiral Zarin continued. We have set course for the Outer Rim territories, beyond the reach of the atmospheric storms. If you are of our blood and are viewing this now, know that we did everything possible to ensure our people's survival. The message ended, but the archives remained open, thousands of files now accessible. No mention of a battle, James observed. No record of attacking your fleet. Kren stood motionless, absorbing the revelation. Our entire military history, our cultural identity as warriors, it was built on a misunderstanding. Trell was already examining other files. Commander, I'm finding navigational records from the original journey. There was an encounter with a fleet near what we now call Zarin's Gap. But he paused, reading further. It wasn't a battle. The Nightfall was damaged by a cosmic storm and sent out distress calls. A fleet responded, but communication failed due to radiation interference. The Nightfall's automated defenses must have activated when your ancestors' ships approached, Mike theorized. Without proper communication, both sides thought they were under attack. And after the encounter, the Nightfall continued its programmed journey to find a habitable world. Lisa added, scanning through more files. It's been following that mission for 2 centuries. Tom looked around the massive ship with new understanding. Not a ghost ship out for revenge, just a lost vessel trying to complete its final mission. Commander Kren moved slowly through the archive room, examining the faces of his ancestors preserved in the holograms. His hand rested on his ceremonial blade, the symbol of his family's dedication to protecting their people from the dreaded Nightfall. 200 years of preparation for war, he said finally. 200 years of building our identity around defeating this ship when it returned. He turned to face James. And now you tell me it was all a mistake. Not a mistake, James replied carefully. A misunderstanding born of crisis and fear. But now you have a chance to reconnect with your past. Your true past. Kren's eyes narrowed. Many in our fleet will not accept this easily. Some will call it a trick, a false history created to lower our defenses. Then we need to find irrefutable proof, James said. Something that will convince even the most skeptical of your people. Lisa, who had been diving deeper into the archives, suddenly called out, "Captain, Commander, I think I found something." According to these logs, the Nightfall wasn't heading to empty space. It was following coordinates to a specific destination. What destination? Kren demanded. Lisa looked up, her eyes wide with excitement. A colony. The logs indicate that an advanced ship was sent ahead with 5,000 settlers. The Nightfall was supposed to rendezvous with them. A colony? Kren repeated. Are you saying there might be another group of my ancestors out there somewhere? Not just somewhere, Lisa replied, bringing up a star chart on the main display. Here, a planet on the edge of what you call the Outer Rim. Commander Kren stared at the coordinates in disbelief. It was a region his people had never explored, believing it to be empty space. If this is true, he said slowly, it changes everything. The command deck of the Nightfall was crowded with officers from both species. Kren had brought his senior staff aboard, while Captain James and his crew worked alongside them to prepare their presentation. Outside, 37 Vex warships maintained their positions, weapons still locked on the ancient vessel. They're ready for us, Lisa announced, finalizing the transmission settings. All fleet commanders are connected to our broadcast. Kren adjusted his formal uniform, his usual confidence replaced by visible tension. Many of them will resist this truth. Our entire military structure, our cultural identity as warriors, it all stems from our history with this ship. Truth is often difficult, James replied, placing a hand on the console between them. But necessary. The main screen activated, showing the faces of dozens of Vex commanders. Their expressions ranged from curious to openly hostile. Fleet commanders, Kren began formally. I speak to you from the command deck of the Nightfall itself. What I have discovered here contradicts everything we have believed about our history. I ask only that you observe the evidence before making judgment. Murmurs spread across the connected ships. One commander, older than the others, spoke up. Commander Kren, has this vessel somehow compromised you? Are you under duress? I am free and clear-minded, Admiral Vex, Kren responded. What I share now comes directly from our ancestors. At his signal, Lisa activated the archival footage they had discovered. The holographic image of Admiral Zarin appeared once more, telling the story of the refugee ship and its mission of survival. As the message played, the Vex commanders fell silent. When it ended, the same admiral spoke again, his voice harder now. This could be a fabrication, a trick designed to lower our defenses. I had the same thought, Kren admitted, which is why we found something more convincing. He nodded to Mike, who activated another set of controls. A new hologram appeared, a complete DNA sequence spinning slowly in the air. This is a genetic record from the Nightfall's database, Kren explained. It matches our species with only minimal drift over 2 centuries. But more importantly, we've discovered this. The display changed to show a star map with a pulsing light at one point. The Nightfall was following coordinates to a colony established before the collapse, a colony of our people that may still exist today. This revelation sent shockwaves through the fleet. The oldest admiral leaned forward, his scales paling. A lost colony, with pure bloodlines from before the collapse. Yes, Kren confirmed. And the Nightfall carries a genetic heritage bank containing DNA samples from our ancestral world, plants, animals, and people long thought lost forever. Tom stepped forward unexpectedly, and it's been trying to deliver this precious cargo for 200 years, despite being attacked every time it encountered your people. A younger commander spoke up, anger evident in her voice. If what you say is true, then our greatest military achievement, the Battle of Zarin's Gap, was nothing but a tragic error. Not an achievement or an error, James interjected calmly. A misunderstanding born of fear and chaos during the collapse. Your ancestors saw a massive vessel with weapons approaching. The Nightfall's automated systems detected your ships as potential threats. Without proper communication, both sides reacted defensively. Lisa added, the ship's logs show it was damaged in a cosmic storm before that encounter. Its communication systems were compromised. There was silence across the fleet as the Vex commanders processed this information. Finally, the eldest admiral spoke again. If there is truly a colony of our ancestors out there, his voice trailed off, the implications too enormous to articulate. There's one more thing, Mike said, stepping forward. He had been working with Trell on the ship's systems for hours. We've managed to access the Nightfall's primary mission protocols. For 2 centuries, it's been trying to reach these coordinates, but damage from various encounters has forced it to repeatedly halt for repairs. Its AI is limited but dedicated to its purpose. Which is? Kren asked. Reuniting your people, James answered. Delivering the genetic heritage and technology from your homeworld to ensure your species' survival. Kren turned back to the fleet commanders. I propose that we escort the Nightfall to these coordinates. If there is indeed a colony of our ancestors there, we will have recovered a piece of our history we thought lost forever. If not, we still have the genetic heritage bank, a treasure beyond measure. The debate among the fleet commanders was intense but brief. Eventually, the eldest admiral gave his decision. The Nightfall will be escorted to these coordinates. Commander Kren will lead the mission, with 5 ships as escort. The rest of the fleet will return to defensive positions. His eyes narrowed as he looked at the humans. And what of these aliens who have stumbled into our history? James stepped forward. We came as explorers, seeking knowledge and peaceful contact with other species. If you'll allow it, we would be honored to accompany you on this journey. Our expertise might be useful, and we can establish formal relations between our peoples. After some discussion, the admiral agreed. So be it, but know that you will be watched carefully, humans. As the transmission ended, the tension on the command deck eased slightly. Kren turned to face James and his crew. It seems we have a journey ahead of us, the commander said. To a new beginning, James replied, or perhaps an old one rediscovered. 3 weeks later, the Nightfall and its escort of Vex warships approached the coordinates from the ancient database. The humans had been granted limited freedom aboard the vessel, helping to restore systems and learn more about the ship's original purpose. We're entering the target solar system, Lisa announced from her position at the sensors. Long-range scans show a habitable planet in the Goldilocks zone. As they drew closer, excitement grew among both crews. The planet appeared blue-green from orbit, with signs of vegetation and water. I'm detecting artificial structures on the surface, Mike reported, his voice tight with anticipation. And energy signatures. Someone's down there. Kren stood silently beside Captain James as the Nightfall entered orbit around the planet. After a moment, the communication system activated on its own. The ancient ship was broadcasting a signal to the surface, a message encoded 2 centuries ago. The response came almost immediately. A voice spoke in an old dialect of the Vex language, one that made Kren's officers glance at each other in amazement. Nightfall, you have finally arrived. Welcome home. On the view screen, they could see a settlement below. A city built with the same fluid architecture as the ship, but expanded and adapted over generations. And gathered in its central square were thousands of Vex, their scales shimmering in the sunlight of their new home. 200 years late, Kren said quietly, but the Nightfall completed its mission. James nodded, watching as tears formed in the eyes of the hardened Vex commander. Not a warrior after all, just a guardian, carrying its precious cargo through the night. As the nightfall began its landing sequence, its journey finally coming to an end, both humans and Vex stood together on the command deck. What had begun as a potential war had transformed into something neither species had expected: a homecoming, a reunion, and the promise of a new alliance between worlds. The ghost ship had reached the end of its night, and a new day was dawning.